In the 1990s, Bill is working at Yellowstone National Park as a park ranger. The job is never the same every day. Sometimes he's on tour guide duty where he educates visitors on park history and forest facts. Sometimes he's asked to go out and record animal population numbers. But mostly he spends his time looking after campers and hikers. Things like reports of troublesome guests, poaching, abandoned campsites, campfires left burning, things like that. One day, Bill gets a call that there's smoke coming from an area of the park where campfires aren't allowed. So he immediately starts making his way out to that area. And at Yellowstone National Park, campfires are only allowed in the designated camping grounds and only within the fire rings that are already installed there. And you can't walk away from a campfire. It's got to be attended at all times. Now, this is certainly not a new issue for the park. People love making campfires when and where they're not supposed to. And more campers than you might think will walk away from a hot campfire. And it doesn't take Bill long to get to the spot where the smoke was reported. And it's nowhere near a proper campground. It's just a makeshift campsite, apparently from someone who either thinks that they're going to rough it out in the woods, or maybe it's a homeless person or a drifter. The campsite is made up of a tattered tarp, which is tied using strings tied to a couple of branches, creating kind of a rough shelter. Next to the tent is an old pair of shoes, one of which actually has a hole in the toe. Definitely not good shoes for walking around in the woods. And 5 soaking wet black socks. Ew! And why only 5? Are hung over another tree branch nearby. And around the perimeter, Bill sees footprints. Shoeless, sockless footprints. They lead out and away from the campsite. Bill thinks, this is weird. You really don't want to be walking around Yellowstone without shoes or boots. But the footprints appear to lead away, and Bill doesn't see any footprints coming back toward the campsite. Not barefoot ones, anyway. Now, Bill is assuming that whoever is staying there has just left for a little while. So he opens his water bottle, douses the still burning embers, leans on a nearby tree, and waits for them to come back. A few minutes go by. No one comes back to the campsite. So Bill starts to walk around, looking out into the woods around them, trying to see if he can see or hear somebody nearby, but he can't. But he's thinking they couldn't have gone that far without their shoes or socks. And as he circles kind of back to the campsite, something grazes the top of his head. He looks up and sees this weird wooden ornament thing tied to a low-hanging tree branch. Bill looks around and sees that there's more of the same kind of ornament hanging around, all tied to tree branches. These ornaments are made of wood that's woven together into a sphere, and he can see through some of the gaps between the pieces of wood. And he can see there's something inside. He gives it a little shake and hears a rattling noise. There's definitely something in it. Bill reaches for a different one, gives it a shake, and there's something inside that one too. Curious, Bill starts to pry apart the wooden branches until he can see what's inside. And a strange smell hits his nose, a smell like gangrene and rot. Now, it takes him some time to understand what he's looking at inside of that little ornament. There's just one thing in there. It's small. It's about the size of his thumb. It's sort of gray and brown with fibrous little dark pieces at the end and rounded on the other end. Just then, Bill realizes what this thing is. It's a human toenail, a big toenail, completely ripped off, roots and all, and placed inside this ornament. Bill drops the sphere as lunch threatens to involuntarily vacate his stomach. He bends over and puts his hands on his knees and takes a few deep breaths to try to steady himself. He looks around and sees more of these ornaments, each carefully tied to a branch. Bill's thinking, no freaking way does each one actually contain a ripped off and decaying toenail. What kind of nut job would do this, and why are they decorating the trees with them? He grabs his walkie-talkie and calls another ranger. Somebody besides him needs to see this. Bill goes back down the trail for a little bit to wait for that other ranger who says that they're on their way with a camera. Unfortunately, it takes them like an hour to get there. But once they do, Bill takes them back to the makeshift campsite. Everything is exactly the way it was when Bill left, except for the toenail ornaments. They're gone. Bill looks at the ground, and now there are at least 100 bare footprints, just like the ones he saw before, now circling the campsite. Whoever's been camping here came back the moment Bill was gone, took their creepy decorations, and bugged out. But to Bill, the creepiest part is the timing, because if they came back just as he left, that means they'd probably been watching him the entire time he was in their camp. And Bill, a seasoned ranger, hadn't seen or heard a thing.